Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else who's tuning in. Good afternoon, y'all. Thank you for joining us today for the Prince George's County Memorial Library System's Community Conversation Series. I am clearly not Roberta Phillips, who is normally here, but Roberta is unfortunately not well at the moment, so I'm standing in. My name is Nick Brown. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Communication and Outreach at the library, and we are here with you today to celebrate LGBTQ plus Pride Month, which we're really thrilled about. And there's a lot that we're going to discuss today that's really important about the resources that the library offers, as well as resources that are available in the community to support all folks in the community, and especially with the LGBTQ plus community right now. So I'm going to ask my esteemed colleagues to introduce themselves and tell you all a bit about what they do here at the library. Today's a special episode because our guests are all from within the library rather than from outside partners. So let's take it away, starting with Teresa.
Hey everybody, yeah, I'm Teresa. I am a librarian at the Greenbelt branch, and I've been with Prince George's County Memorial Library System for about 3 years now. I'm not from this area, so I moved here for grad school to work on my master's in library and information science. Started working with the library system here pretty soon after I got here, and then finished my degree last year.
Awesome. Thank you. Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm a library associate at the Bowie branch in the Youth Services Department. So I've been doing the story times for the last 2 years. I started out in the system at circulation in 2005. So it's always nice when a customer says, "You were downstairs and now you're upstairs."
Cool. Rebecca?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Oxley. I'm the Librarian 3 Supervisor at the Greenbelt branch. I've been with Prince George's County Memorial Library System for about 3.5 years. About before that, I was a school librarian for 5 years in the county. And yeah, just loving life.
Awesome. Thank you. I just want to apologize quickly about the gendered welcome that I gave. I did not intend for that to be gendered, but we're very happy that everyone is here with us today, tuning in and also on the panel. Could we all share what our preferred pronouns are before we jump in?
Yeah, of course, I'm she, her.
He, him, his.
She, her, hers.
He, him, his for me as well. Okay, cool. So let's get things underway. At any point, if you have questions, please let us know in the chat box or the comment thread. Welcome, Olivia. Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate you. And Olivia is one of our great colleagues. We're also live on YouTube, Periscope, and Facebook. So wherever you've got a question, let us know. We have a shout out already from Alexandra Phelps on Facebook, who says hi to Chris. And they've seen Chris at many of their kids' story times, which is awesome. And
Alexandra.
yeah. Very cool. And Sarah Garifo is on, also a wonderful colleague. Thank you for joining us. So our goals today are to highlight some of the library's LGBTQ plus resources. We're gonna talk about some of our projects and initiatives that we have underway this Pride Month. We're gonna talk specifically about the It Gets Better project and how we're supporting that. And we're also going to give you an overview of a lot of really great resources that exist through the library or through the community, which we've kind of organized on our community resource pages. So first off, would like you all to speak, if you don't mind, about what motivated you to join the LGBTQ plus working group at the library and what that group actually is. So maybe turn over to Teresa first on that.
Yeah, so I first got the group started because I knew that we had so many staff who really care about LGBTQ plus folks and wanted to provide really good programming, but we as a library system hadn't had a huge push for highlighting Pride Month and other programs throughout the year. So we wanted to really just amp that up and start to really prioritize this community and services for them.
Awesome. Thank you. Others?
Um, Before Teresa invited me to the group, Sarah and I had been trying to maybe discuss starting something at Bowie, but then just time and space kind of took over with things. And so when Rachel told me that Teresa was starting up a group system wide, I was definitely on board with it.
Cool.
And I was just so super excited when I found out that we were going to have this committee. At the time, I was the librarian 3 at South Bowie, and I was just like, I want South Bowie to be a part of this. I'm really excited to see that I'm not the only person who's making their own pride displays and trying to come up with better queer programming to better serve the LGBTQ plus community. So I jumped on the chance, and now I get to work with Teresa. So that's really cool.
Awesome. And I'm the newest, or one of the newer members of the group. We have some additional new staff who joined it this year. I joined the library in January, and even prior to coming, I was hearing about the group and the great work that you've all been doing for quite a while now, and I was very excited to jump in to support you all. In one of my old lives, prior to coming to PGCMLS, I worked at Library of Congress, where I was the chair of LC Globe, which is the library's LGBTQ plus employee association, and for many years had been the only group doing LGBTQ plus programming there. And I also was the lead curator of the library's first ever Pride pop-up exhibit. That was an institution-wide thing that we did in 2017, which was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And many great stories of colleagues all over the country who I'm involved in the American Library Association Rainbow Roundtable, which is actually celebrating its 50th year this year, and it is the oldest LGBTQ plus employee association in the country, which is kind of awesome. Like pretty much right after Stonewall, they were established and have been serving the community nationally, which is great. Okay, so. What all has the LGBTQ plus team been doing, and what has been the kind of shape of the experience for you all from when you first joined the team and to where we are now, and what's coming for the future beyond just this year?
So the main part of what we're doing is making sure that we have really thoughtful and high quality programming for our customers. So that means making sure that our staff are equipped to develop these programs, and also putting effort into some larger system-wide things. Like before everything got closed down and we moved virtual, we were planning to do our first Rainbow Family Festival this weekend. So we were having organizations from the community in the DMV area who were going to come and share the resources that they have available, and we'd have some activities for children and families. Unfortunately, that's on hold. We're hoping we can do that next year instead. But we want to see these big, system-wide efforts to really emphasize our services to the LGBTQ plus community.
Great. Any other ideas on that?
Well, one of the things too that we wanted to make sure is that there was a certain level of cultural competency that all of our Prince George's County Memorial Library System employees had when it came to serving the LGBTQ plus community. And that included Reader's Advisory, it included how to be an ally, it included some explanation about gender and the spectrum of gender, the spectrum of sexuality. So, and that's one thing I'm really proud of, is that we were able to put together a toolkit for all the employees.
Yeah, it's been a really amazing resource to see the library get behind the creation of, and has been, I think, one of the most tremendously powerful impacts of this group, in that you're creating a resource. We think as a library about resources for the public, but sometimes what we have to do is provide resources that will enable us as a team to better serve the public before we just focus on the external piece of it. So that's a really important document and resource for all of us that we'll be able to keep evolving in the future. Also want to just shout out another organization that I know Olivia is involved with, at least in supporting it, which is Query Librarians, which is an organization of library information professionals who support queer libraries and archives, and the librarians and archivists who run them, the creators who fill them, and the users who love them. It's another organization that's really important in terms of bringing those of us who do this kind of work together across the country so that we can share best practices. And I'm really excited for all of us getting more involved in those organizations on behalf of the library to share the great work out with our colleagues. So Pride Month has a lot of different meanings and purposes, and it is very much an individual thing while also being a collective thing that we commemorate. Would any of you like to speak to kind of the origin of Pride Month as a thing and what Pride Month means to you now?
Good.
No, you go ahead, Chris.
The origin, June of 1969, in New York, the Stonewall riots. Basically, the queer community had it kind of up to here with issues of police brutality and not being able to live their lives openly. And of course, there were events before that happened where members of the queer community stood up for their rights. But for whatever reason, that instance in New York became kind of the spark. And then in 1970, they created what I think back then was called the first Gay Freedom Day parade as kind of memorial and celebration of the community. And it's continued on every year up to now, where we are on the 50th anniversary.
Cool. And one important note on Stonewall, it was that Stonewall is just a big kind of flashpoint in history of a lot of important work that was happening for years and years before that in terms of the activism and the advocacy that was necessary in order to kind of get to the point where there was even a mass that was ready to come together to say enough is enough. And there had been protests that were similar in LA, for example, years before that. And in the 50s, of course, when there was the lavender scare in the federal government, where there was a lot of ousting of folks like Frank Kameny, who was an important early activist. Stonewall was not the beginning, but it is the kind of big benchmark moment that set off the major movement towards gay liberation in that time. And this year, as Chris mentioned, is the 50th anniversary of the first Pride celebration, which was a liberation parade in that first year, 1970. So we get to kind of do 2 years of 50th anniversary, since last year was Stonewall 50, and we can just kind of keep on with that for years because everyone wants to celebrate that. So what does Pride mean to y'all now? And I know this year is a bit different in maybe our experience of Pride months recently, just given the circumstances that we're all facing. But what does it mean to you?
Well, I think Pride for me, I hesitate to say that it's just a wonderful time to get together, to be out, to be open, to not have to worry, to be amongst friends, to make new friends, to see the parade and just have a wonderful time that feels like you're allowed to be yourself, where it just doesn't always feel like that every other time of the year. Pride for me this year is difficult for a number of reasons. Number one, we have the pandemic, which is making it so that we can't physically gather. And number two, we have the protests going on the Black Lives Matter movement. And Pride just has taken on a whole different shade this year, I think, for me.
I think I definitely agree with the celebration aspect. It's always great getting together with friends and family members of the queer community, and then just to see like younger generations who are able to be more open and out than I ever was at their age, just enjoying life and having fun. And I've always been a history geek too, so it's always been kind of a time of reflection for me as well, especially more so this year where I've been going back to the kind of intersecting ideas of LGBTQ justice also means racial justice and justice for women, and so I've been going back to Audre Lorde, James Baldwin, Essex Hemphill, who was a local DC poet.
A comment there from our friend Tina, who says, when we know our history, we know who we are, and we give snaps for that. It is very much the case. Thank you for sharing that, Tina. So for me personally, Pride, and I know I'm supposed to be the moderator, but I'm going to chime in with an opinion anyways. Pride just it's this amazing, powerful thing that is about people getting together. And I think especially in this moment, it's making us look back and acknowledge and kind of better appreciate the fact that it has not always been a party. And the first Pride celebration was not a party; it was a protest march. Even more recently, even as recent as last year in New York, there were actually 2 marches. There was another repeat of that first Liberation March on the original route, roughly, plus the big Stonewall 50 parade, which had the corporate, the more expansive thing that we're used to now. But it's been even a thing in Capitol Pride that Capitol Pride's a really great organization, but they've had to become responsive to what their community was saying to them, and there's been a lot of growth around making sure that Pride isn't just a corporate celebration that is a marketing exercise towards the LGBTQ plus community. While, I mean, there's a lot of great things about that, like representation in corporate America. That's awesome, but it's a very nuanced and complex thing, and it is not just the party that it can be viewed as by some anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, moving right along. What are some of the challenges that you might have faced, or that you see as major challenges in the LGBTQ plus community right now, locally or nationally?
I can speak to my personal experience. I'm a bisexual female. I've signed female at birth, and I met and married my soulmate of 20 years, who happens to be assigned male at birth. And so I've gotten a lot of biphobia from both the straight and the queer communities that says, well, you're not bisexual enough any longer, because you chose your mate who is a man instead of a woman. When growing up, I took a lot of crap from both sides. Also, people just saying that I was confused, or that I was selfish, or couldn't make up my mind. So biphobia is something I've been pretty keen on eradicating. So you do it in little bites, little seeds that you plant when you talk to people.
And another form that can take, that I've experienced also, is I'm also bisexual. And often people who I think are well-meaning but misguided will say that while they're talking about like pansexuality, for example, and highlighting what that means for them, they kind of turn it around and will say that bisexuality isn't inclusive of diverse genders, and that is limited to a binary idea of just men and women, and that's not the case. And it doesn't help anyone for people to try to identify someone else's sexuality for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a nope.
No, you go ahead.
I'm a cis gay queer man, and I remember a year after I started coming out, I met a trans woman at a friend's party, and we just had this is years ago, but even I still remember kind of this solid core of, we compared and contrasted our different experiences of coming out and within the community, and that I think kind of cemented for me, and then seeing a frustration where some people don't accept trans people within the community, or they're just kind of like, I've got my piece of the pie as a gay man, I don't want to deal with all the other issues of transphobia or racism in the community. So it's kind of more like, let's kind of come together instead of just skipping out on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely.
And I'd like to add, especially because we're talking about being Prince George's proud, is that it's a issue that we have right here in our own community, that Black trans women are being murdered at a disproportionate rate. And it has happened here in Prince George's County. And so that's something that I really would like to see is more talk about intersectionality when it comes to talking about queer issues and queer spaces in Prince George's County, especially.
Definitely. My own experience, I'm gay. I don't say that very often in a work setting. It just kind of is either known or just comes up kind of in conversation through other things. But I'm gay. I'm cis male. My mom is Honduran, so I'm half Hispanic and half white American, and I think my coming out experience was very much tied to the time of which I was a teenager and entering my 20s. So early aughts and mid aughts was really when a lot of this was happening for me personally. And I was in the military throughout college, under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, while I was like just starting to become more comfortable publicly with things. And I, for a long time, had not wanted to assign a label because I wasn't kind of fully there yet. And total non sequitur, but was just looking at one of my high school yearbooks the other day, and I saw some of the awful stuff that I heard in person in high school, even though I wasn't out. People just always, the kind of average everyday high school bullying type stuff of the use of certain words. And to see that people had written that in my yearbook, well, I was just like, seriously? And I hadn't even seen that since, because I hadn't revisited those. But we all have different journeys with it, and it's all a very individual thing. But I think for those of us who have benefited from things like white privilege and supportive families overall, I think we really kind of have to use our position to help those who don't have those same privileges. And the representation, all that we do, for example, with the trans community right now, it's like that is one of the main issues of our moment, that we need to make sure that there's space for dialogue around. And like our panel right now, there's no way that we could possibly be representative of the whole LGBTQ plus community. And that's part of the importance of these conversations, where we can show that it's not a monolithic thing. It's not just us. We are just small voices in this overall community that is really diverse within itself. Anyways, I think it's an important thing that we're doing this conversation even. I think this is the first of its kind for our library system, which is really remarkable and wonderful that we're living and working in a community that values our voices and that values the investment in the resources that it takes to help those voices kind of advance themselves too. So I will stop pontificating. What resources exist through the library specifically for LGBTQ plus Prince Georgians and families?
Well, right now,
Sorry.
Now, the main hub that we have going on is our Pride Heritage page. So we've put together, there's some history highlights, highlighting certain members of the queer community. We've got some specific resources from our digital collection highlighted there also. And all of our Pride events linked there too, or available on our events page. So be sure to check that out.
Yeah, I really love the timeline that we have on our heritage page that talks about the struggle for gay civil rights.
And there's a few links, like communal links to local PG County groups as well. And we're hoping to add to that more in the near future.
I was muted. Sorry. That's when you got to flail at me. Everyone was so respectful. I was like, oh, what's going on? So my follow-up question was, what are we doing in terms of curating content in the collections, whether that's ebooks or audiobooks or streaming, to increase kind of the discoverability of these resources that we have?
So we've put together some lists on Beanstack, also organized into different age groups. So we've highlighted some of our YA books. We have a lot of really great young adult material on this topic, and then also lists for adults, and juvenile books and picture books, also highlighting fiction and nonfiction. There are also a lot of great documentaries and films through Canopy that you can search through, and it's really easy to look through their LGBTQ plus selection on there.
Yeah, to add on to what you just said, Teresa, I went on this morning and I was like, there's a whole Pride banner on Canopy where they're highlighting movies and documentaries, which is really cool. And then hopefully later in the month, we're going to be doing a viewers advisory where we'll be talking about different films that you can stream for free through the library system.
Yes, and I was telling our colleagues in our meeting the other day, Canopy even has some films that Amazon is censoring, which is kind of shady, but check it out.
Free on Canopy.
Yes.
Limited.
Yeah. Cool. So what are generally like some of the different gatherings that happen in the broader community that people may or may not know about in terms of Pride celebrations or whether it's Annapolis Pride, anything else, other ideas?
Well, it's something that we talked about as the LGBTQ plus committee, is that there's a dearth of stuff happening here in Prince George's County. There's not as many queer spaces, and so we tend to get involved with Capitol Pride or Baltimore Pride. So that's why I thought it was really fantastic to see that Annapolis had done their first Pride celebration. And I'd like to see something like that here in Prince George's County, which is why I thought the Rainbow Family Fest was a really great start.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Also, through Capitol Pride, which of course is the kind of big Pride organization in the area, they have affiliate organizations, whether that's and I'm not going to get the nomenclature totally right, but there's DC Black Pride and Latinx Pride and Trans Pride, and some others that they have in their umbrella, and Family Pride even. So there's opportunities both to kind of be involved in the overarching LGBTQ plus community that Capitol Pride organizes, but then there's also the affinity groups within that, which is a great way to ensure that there are platforms for everyone to kind of self-identify where they want to get, plug into the community and access resources and build connections with other people too, which is really important. One thing that's happened a lot generally, that kind of plays into the point you all made about not as many kind of distinct LGBTQ plus spaces in the county existing. What are your thoughts generally on the way that physical gathering spaces have changed from like back in the days when, even in DC, I've been here for just over 8 years now, there were a lot of bars before. And there were multiple bars that focused on the lesbian clientele. And there were, and even the Eagle, for example, has just closed down, which is like a staple. Not necessarily for everyone, but is a historically important institution. So what are your thoughts on the way that the nature of spaces that are LGBTQ plus primarily have changed?
I don't know about changing. I can definitely speak to like my experience of like when I was younger. I grew up in the South Shore of Long Island, so to me the city was New York City. And my mother would take me into the village, and there's this one time when we were eating dinner in an Italian restaurant, and it hit like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and it was like a switch flipped. And suddenly there were two women kissing behind me, and I felt completely enthralled. My little baby queer self was just like, wow, look at this. People are out here really like living their lives. I didn't know spaces like that even existed. And I went to all ages clubs and things like that when I was younger. But I generally have to go into DC to find queer spaces.
Do any of you have thoughts on the ways that the LGBTQ plus community has become more accepted and like the economics then of all businesses kind of becoming more welcoming, but then that changing the economics of the community specific spaces? And you don't have to have an answer on this. This is just something that I'm always curious about discussing.
Well, I haven't been in the area for very long, but before I moved to the DC area, I wasn't in I wasn't near any large cities. So, um, having a chance to engage with like a really thriving queer community is something I was really looking forward to about this area. And um, I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit disappointing that there aren't as many uniquely queer spaces available. It's great that things are more accepting, but I would love to see some more spaces that are, specifically focused on queer folks, especially queer women and queer femmes.
Yeah. I had like even when I was in high school, visiting, no, it wasn't high school, college, visiting DC, the HRC store used to be up on DuPont Circle. And then also there was I think it was Lambda Rising or Lambda something, the bookstore.
Yeah.
And even in DuPont Circle, which is, the gayborhood, right? Those dedicated spaces are going and the bars too. And it's really interesting.
I've been going to DC because it's kind of the hub of queer culture and closest to us since about '05. And my heart was broken when Lambda Rising closed. I still have pictures of like my last visit to there.
Oh,
But then, I mean, it's interesting because DuPont Circle was kind of the historic neighborhood for DC. But then with kind of the double-edged sword of greater acceptance, you have that community has kind of shrunken and it's spread out to other neighborhoods. But then at the same time, like you said, every Pride Month, every company slaps a rainbow in the window, and then the rainbows come down when Pride Month is over. And then what both Teresa and Rebecca were saying is that even with like DuPont historically being a gay neighborhood, it was always, at least a bit from my perspective, a very gay male-centered neighborhood.
yeah.
And you have to kind of explore more to find a more integrated queer community in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. There are two organizations that are really important with the local history. One is the Rainbow History Project. The other one is the Latino GLBT History Project. And I'm sure there are others too that I'm failing to mention, for which I apologize. But those are the two that I'm most familiar with, and they're really important efforts that scholars are doing, and then also community organizations, and making sure that this history is preserved, because it is, tremendously important and was not always documented in the way that archives or libraries would typically document. Okay, can you tell us a bit about the It Gets Better project, what that is, and then also how our team is participating in it?
Yeah, I was really interested in doing an It Gets Better program for the library. The It Gets Better project you can find on YouTube. It is essentially people who are newer adults, so like ages 18 to 24, although sometimes you do see some more mature folks on there, but essentially it was just a video of them talking about their own queer experiences and giving advice to young queer kids. And with the adage, it gets better, that whatever you're going through right now, just hang in there because it gets better. So I had gotten some speakers from the Rainbow Terps at UMD Equity Center to come out and talk about themselves and just explore like their different stories. And it was supposed to be a program for teens, and the first night of the closure was the night that it was supposed to happen. So we decided to take it virtual, and Chris and Teresa and myself, thank you guys so much for participating and for making videos. I think it's so important that little queer kids or kids who have queer parents or just anybody who's part of the community hears these words of encouragement.
It was a really good experience for me participating in it because it gives you a chance to kind of, a lot of reflection goes on into deciding like what you want to say, and then it's like a cathartic experience to put it into words. So I'm really excited that not just our own library community, but since we're virtual right now, literally anyone can go on our YouTube channel and access those videos.
Totally. And we hope to have many more videos, both from staff, and if anyone records their own out there that they'd like to share with us, we'd be happy to see them. Just tag the library, and we potentially share those out as well. One of the big issues that our community and the extended community is facing is youth suicide. And I know we don't want to, that wasn't the planned focus of the conversation today, but I just want to open up for a little bit of discussion around that and highlight a 24/7 hotline for anyone that's available, that is interested or might need it. It's through the Trevor Project, and the phone number is 1-866-488-7386. And there are many other hotlines like that that are available locally in your local government or state or nationally even. Given that this is a big issue that young people are facing, what can we do in library communities to continue to model that there are resources available for folks, and that even particularly just thinking about books, how do we make sure that books are available for folks to see that they're reflected in stories in order to maybe not go to extreme measures to kind of deal with what they're facing.
Definitely, like the very visual promotion of the resources we have for this community is important. It can be a little complex sometimes because you also want people to be able to safely access our resources. But making it clear that as an organization, we're prioritizing, we're really putting in work to make sure that our libraries are a safe space, and that our staff are people you can talk to if you need help getting resources is definitely very important. One thing also that I think is something we've gained from moving to our virtual programs is hopefully this gives a chance for any young people who are in unsafe situations to access some of the programs we're doing without fear of outing themselves by attending the programs.
Thank you. Okay, can you all tell us a bit about the library's virtual Pride Community Quilt Project?
Yeah, so what this is, it's modeled around the Historic AIDS Quilt Project. We are looking for anyone in the community to create something. It could be some visual art or a video, whatever medium you like to work in, to just demonstrate what pride means to you in whatever way you would like to. And then you can submit that to us by emailing it to, correct me if I'm wrong, are those going straight to pr@pgcmls.info? Great. And then at the end of the month, we're going to compile all of those into a visual piece to share on our website.
Cool. We encourage folks to participate. This is a really cool opportunity to kind of lend your voice to something for the greater good, and whether it's a photo or an artwork, a piece of art that you have scanned or taken a picture of, or a short video clip, or even just some text. Like we received one submission that is text, and we'll be able to put that into the graphic design of it. But this is a really great way to kind of make sure that the community has a forum through us to kind of get out some words of encouragement for folks.
Yes, and participation from allies is very welcome.
Yes, yeah, and that's one of the great things with our working group. Our working group is not just LGBTQ plus individuals. We have allies as well, and we have many allies throughout the library system who are there to support us as we do this work. Yep, PGCMLS sites are definitely all safe spaces, and that's one of the big strategic priorities right now of our county government through County Executive Oxley Brooks, and we are really proud to be safe spaces for the queer community, for sure. And what are some of the other virtual events coming up in the next 48 hours even?
Well, now that you ask, we're going to be having a special happy hour tonight at 5:30. You can sign up through Eventbrite, and it's going to be via Zoom. We're going to have trivia and a drag host, and should be a whole lot of fun.
Cool.
Then,
Yep. Good.
Tomorrow we'll have another at 10 a.m. We'll have another Pride story time.
Yep, and at noon we'll have a STEM at home, learning how to code, and we'll be talking about Alan M. Turing.
Did everyone see the? Sorry, my lighting is getting wonky. The sun just moved. Did everyone see the Enigma movie? That with the Alan Turing story. That was a feature film a few years ago.
Oh, yes, that's right.
It was really good.
I saw there was a different one. That was the one with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yes.
I saw one that was done in the 90s starring Derek Jacobi.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
I gotta check that out. It's probably in Canopy, in fact. I bet if anyone wants to.
Canopy, it's definitely on YouTube.
Cool. Probably not legally on YouTube,
Probably not.
but we'll not take responsibility for that one.
We also have a Rainbow Crafternoon tomorrow. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly what time. Is that 4 p.m.?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Thank you. Sorry for that. Yeah, you'll learn how to make a rainbow collage, which will be fun.
Cool. How about later next week and the week after?
We have a couple visiting authors, which is really exciting. We're going to have R.E. Thomas, whose book Here for It is really great. I got to read it last month, so he'll be talking about his book. And then the week after that, that is on the 9th. And then on the 17th, we'll have another visiting author, G.M. Johnson, for Not All Boys Are Blue.
I said the movie title wrong. It's The Imitation Game, the one with Benedict Cumberbatch. I don't know why I said Enigma. I think they came out at the same time. Or maybe I was just imagining things.
I think Enigma was the name of the machine.
Yes, that's why I did it.
And Chris, you were talking about in a viewer's advisory that is going to be coming up sometime this month also?
Yes, that is going to be June. Make sure I've got the date and time right.
It was Monday the 15th in the evening.
The 15th at 7 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then, see, I'm pulling up my list here. We've got a STEM, actually 2 STEM programs for Pride. One is tomorrow at 12, which is Hour of Code. And then sorry, my dogs are barking in the background. One of them is named after Dolly Parton, so gets Pride Month Diva props. And then Friday the 12th at 12 is a spectroscope activity that folks can do from home. We have an all ages LGBTQ plus readers advisory airing tonight after the happy hour. So at 7 o'clock, you'll have the opportunity to hear about some great book recommendations. We're having a Pride career chat on Wednesday the 17th at 4 o'clock, an LGBTQ plus zines workshop Friday the 19th at 4 o'clock, and then we'll have another special Pride book chat on Twitter Thursday, June 25th at 12. We had a great unofficial Pride book chat today, which was really fun. So while we're on that note, what are some of the books that you're planning to read this Pride Month? Whether they're Pride Month themed or not.
Finally got my hands on a copy of Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Mariko Tamaki, which is a graphic novel. I'm kind of a graphic novel aficionado, so I read tons and tons of queer graphic novels for youth and teens and adults. But so far, I'm just absolutely just in love with it. It's so beautiful.
Cool.
I haven't been reading as much as a good librarian should, but I did just finish watching She-Ra on Netflix.
Yes.
That's great. Should definitely check that out.
I'm in the middle of The Lonely City by Olivia Lang. It's a collection of essays on loneliness in New York City and artists that worked within kind of the themes of loneliness, including queer artists like Andy Warhol and David Wojnarowicz. And then I'm about to start a local DC author, science fiction. The author is lesbian non-binary, Lena Rather.
Cool. I have a lot of the new queer YA books that are coming out that I've been ordering nonstop online because whoever is marketing these on social media is a genius, and I just like get every pretty cover in my feed, and like between me and my partner Chris, we're just like order, which is not good for our bank account, but it's okay. It's totally worth it. And another one that I have kind of on my extended TBR is a book that I picked up last year, which is the new edition through Penguin Classics of the Stonewall Reader. New York Public did a new edition of it in conjunction with their Stonewall 50 exhibit last year. And this book has a lot of firsthand accounts of the Stonewall Uprising from 1969. And it's a chance to kind of read some of the different perspectives, because if anyone is new to the history of the Stonewall Uprising, many stories don't match the other in terms of who did what and who threw what, and who did what first, and all kinds of things. So I'm a fan of always going to the primary sources and then coming up with my own interpretation, which I know not everyone is into that, but that's what I'm going to do with that book. Any other like TV shows, like with this kind of a little sampling of all of our upcoming programs, but any TV shows or documentaries or movies that you all want to plug?
Pose.
Yes.
Pose.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Pose is just one of the best things to happen to television in the longest time.
I agree
My
wholeheartedly.
husband and I just absolutely loved Pose. We watched the first 2 seasons and can't wait for more.
Now, my challenge to anyone who's new to Pose is to enjoy it and learn from it, and then also do a little work to learn what ballroom culture is distinctly from trans culture, because they are not the same thing. And I think some folks who might not be might not have as much experience with these topics might not realize that there are actually distinctions between different cultures in the LGBTQ world, and ballroom culture is its own thing, and it's not necessarily representative of everyone, and should not be confused with everything else too, for the sake of respecting the trans community. Other recommendations? Queer Eye comes back tomorrow, new season, set in Philly.
New season, and everybody should, if you haven't watched Steven Universe Future already, go ahead and watch it because it's amazing. It's a fantastic end to a fantastic show.
Cool.
A movie you can find on Canopy. Again, being a history geek, it's a documentary called United in Anger, A History of ACT UP. And it goes to a lot of the protests organization that was happening for people with AIDS and healthcare during the 80s and the 90s. And there's a lot of it that's applicable to what's going on today, too.
Mm-hmm. On that note, in the way that kind of history is oddly cyclical in this moment where we've been so focused on Anthony Fauci, he became infamous back in the days when Larry Kramer was leading the charge in the AIDS activism movement. And he and Larry Kramer, who just passed away, it was a tremendous figure, both in literature as a writer. He wrote in The Normal Heart, which is a really important play, and also as an activist. He and Dr. Fauci butted heads, of course, in the AIDS epidemic peak in the 80s, and they actually came together and over the years and became actually really close friends, which is, I think, a really special thing that says a lot about the two of them as people, where they're able to kind of learn from each other and then kind of find their common ground and kind of be closer as a result. But Larry Kramer, for me personally, just one of the most significant and important people in history who I think we all stand to learn a lot from. And he was someone who inspired others to kind of affect change, but also, had his own very distinct voice that wasn't always loved by everyone, but he found his path. And Olivia shared a comment, says, yes, now is a perfect time to watch United in Anger, being with a Larry Kramer clip. Rest in peace, for sure. Okay, so we're going to open up to audience questions now for a few minutes. If anyone has questions for our panel, please let us know anywhere that you're watching us from, here in Crowdcast or on Facebook or on Twitter, and we will answer those questions for you. If you do not have a PGCMLS virtual library card yet, please get one. You can get it for free at our website, pgcmls.info. And the library hack is that you do not have to live in the county to get one of those virtual library cards. You can live anywhere in the DMV area and pretty much get one of those temporary cards, which is really special. So, and we have our own ebook collection compared to the Maryland Consortium, and also Montgomery County has their own now because they copied us, which is whatever. But if you play your cards right, anyone with a Maryland license or anyone with a DC license can actually get all three of those major ebook collections and audiobook collections in Maryland. You can get the Montgomery County card, the Maryland Consortium card through any of the other counties, and then our card, which is really cool too. So you can get on all the hold lists and then pick whichever one comes through first. No question, just glad to hear about all the great work everyone is doing here. Thank you, Chris, for that comment. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
So what do you all envision as being the next step for the working group after, because this is now a permanent group that we have. What will be our focuses coming out of this Pride Month?
One thing we want to put more work into is just continuing to develop our staff resources, and working on getting some regular trainings available, and just keeping this conversation going.
Yeah, and I think that, unfortunately, we weren't able to have the Rainbow Family Fest this year, but I think it's just going to mean that with a whole nother year to plan it, it's just going to be bigger and better than it probably would have been even this year, if that's possible.
Yes, and we will find a way to have glitter, which I know some of our colleagues will not ever allow inside the building, but I've already committed to body glitter, which they can't do anything about. And I know Michael Gannon will come after me with with a book, and that's okay. We love him.
Tina says that she will be there at the Rainbow Family Fest. That's awesome. Can't wait to see
you, Tina. Yeah. And we'd love to connect too with Employ Prince George's, where Tina works on focusing some opportunities for LGBTQ plus individuals who are thinking about entering the workforce, on how to kind of manage that and be their true selves in that process, because it's a really important thing, and it's a choice that everyone has to make for themselves about how out you want to be in your professional life. But as someone who has kind of transitioned through that and am now on the side of living, I'm as out as it gets. And it's such a liberating feeling to be able to just show up in the same way in all the spaces that you interact in. And I know that that's a very privileged position that I have. But some of it is too, like I don't want to enter an environment where I know that I can't be that, and not every environment is open. So it's important to kind of think about those things when you go into employment, especially.
Yeah, I can remember switching schools when I was a school librarian. I went from one school that had a lot of out teachers and out students, and then going to a school that I absolutely loved, but that I realized was not as accepting, and kind of had to take a step back into the closet. So that was not a good feeling.
Yep. Go ahead, Chris.
No, and just hopefully when staff can get back together face to face, we can have ongoing discussions and questions with each other and kind of educate each other, and just, it's always easier to talk face to face.
As we kind of wrap up here, if we don't receive any more questions, I have one more prompt for you all. Just want to thank Olivia for your comment saying thank you all for the work you do for the public and supporting LGBTQ plus staff and allies as well. We thank you too for all of your work, Olivia. So is there, has there been a moment in your lives with your identity, and you might have covered this in your It Gets Better video, but where you really felt the changes happening in society, like whether that was Don't Ask, Don't Tell or marriage equality or something like that? I would love to hear some personal experiences if you're willing to share.
Yeah, this was at work at some point last year. I walked by a table of girls who would be around middle school. They're just having a conversation. I caught a little bit of it, and they were talking about a friend, and one of them goes, "Oh yeah, she's bisexual," and the rest were just like, "Oh, I didn't know that. Okay," and moved on with their conversation. And I cannot even imagine what it must be like to be in middle school and talking that freely and being in
Yeah.
an environment where everyone's just chill, like it's
Yep.
just a thing.
Definitely. That middle school was not that nice when I went through it. Like I had my high points, but oh lordy, hormones are rough in middle school.
Yeah. I came out in middle school, and there was a show that was on in the 90s called My So-Called Life. That was one of the first like teen shows to have a gay character. And to me, that said, just the representation of that made me feel so much better. Growing up as a child in the 80s and then a teenager in the 90s, to me, I felt like things were getting so much better, and I had no clue that they would get even better than that. That one day you would be able to marry whoever you loved.
Kind of a work specific example. This is probably over a year and a half ago, but I had to go over to a table of teenagers because their volume was getting a bit too loud. But then when I went over, I saw the person that was speaking, going back to the book chat we had this morning, they were reading out loud a poem from Dinesh Smith's poetry book, and they're a Black queer non-binary pause poet, and I was just like, that's an instance I would have never thought could happen in a library when I was a kid. It just felt like a really cool moment. And even they're just, kind of at different younger generations, they really are embracing each other more and more in a positive way.
Yeah, the attitude that the younger generation has and just the resources that are available for them too is mind blowing. It's amazing. Or just like when we were just giving recommendations a couple minutes ago, like we listed a couple of very queer kids shows that are just unapologetic about it and on mainstream TV, and it really is amazing. You're muted again.
Nick, you're on mute.
Thank you. It was intentional, so the audience didn't have to hear my typing. So I think about these moments a lot just in life because they're some of the more meaningful moments. And so when I was in the military, I was in the National Guard in the Army, and it was while I was in undergrad, and I had still been like professionally in the closet until because I was in the arts and already kind of working on top of school. And in senior year, I kind of got to the point where this was it. And Don't Ask, Don't Tell was still in place. And I ended up going to my senior formal dance with my boyfriend at the time, who shall remain nameless for many, not the boyfriend anymore, clearly. So, but I wore my uniform, and there were a lot of state police at the event doing security, and a lot of those guys were in the guard too. And I was like one of these moments where I just felt so okay with being me, even though I knew I could have gotten in trouble for it, because I could have still gotten discharged at that point. And then it was interesting when I came out to my military family, because they are really like your family. Even though I knew like probably most of them suspected and figured it out, like it was a thing anyways, nobody changed their demeanor with me. Everyone was like equally supportive and collegial as they were before. And I know that's not the experience that everyone's had, but sometimes we don't give our support systems as much credit as they deserve, with kind of knowing that they'll be there, hopefully. But that was a really special moment for me, at least.
Oh, thanks for sharing that with us, Nick.
No
That's
problem.
very courageous.
In my my lights here that are going bizarre. Okay, so let's do rapid parting words. Anything you want to say to folks tuning in as we wrap up, besides come to happy hour in 30 minutes?
Rapid words are not my strength.
That's okay.
Well, we're so glad you're all here, and that that we have all these programs lined up for you to participate in. We've put a lot of work into it this past year, so it feels really good to see it all coming together and seeing people finally able to participate. So we're glad you're here.
No, go ahead, Rebecca.
I was just going to say, I second that what Teresa just said. And I would just encourage people to know that there are queer folks here in Prince George's County. We're your neighbors, we're your librarians, we're probably people who attend your church. And so I just want to encourage everybody to reach out to one another lovingly and with full glad hearts.
And thank you everyone for coming and helping us with this work that's on the stream right now. And hopefully the world should get better, and hopefully we'll all make it better.
Cool. Thank you. And my parting words are, I'm very proud of the three of you and the entire LGBTQ plus team and the whole staff at the library, because it's been really wonderful to be welcomed into the family here, but also I'm very proud of the work that you've all accomplished. And it's a tremendous service to the community, and I've been benefiting from it since I moved into the county 3 years ago, and I appreciate being able to contribute as well now too. And thank you to Tina, who is one of our groupies with our community conversations. We appreciate you. Tina works at one of our great partners, Employ Prince George's, and we appreciate your thoughts that you've just shared with us there. Okay, we'll see you all again, hopefully at 5:30, and then at 7, and then at 10 tomorrow, and at 12, and 3, and 4 for meditation, and all day Saturday. We've got a lot going on. It's a lot of fun. We are your awesome PGCMLS team. We are honored to serve you all, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Happy
you.
Pride.
Happy Pride.
Pride.